The wind howled across the frozen hills like a wounded beast. Snowflakes danced in wild swirls under the pale sky, covering everything in a heavy white silence. In the middle of this icy land stood a small, lonely cabin made of metal and wood. The heater inside hummed quietly, casting soft warmth across the single-room shelter. Ray sat by the fireplace wrapped in a thick jacket. He held a warm mug in his hands and stared out the frosted window. It was another cold evening on the colony planet Arctura 6. The sun had set hours ago, and the outside temperature had dropped dangerously low. Even the native creatures had stopped moving. Ray was used to being alone. After leaving Earth 5 years ago, he had settled here to escape the noise of cities and wars. Life on Arctura 6 was quiet. Harsh, but quiet. He hunted, built, and read books. The only sound tonight was the wind, until he heard a knock. He froze. It was soft, barely there. He thought maybe the wind had tricked him. Then it came again. A slow, weak knock. Ray placed his mug down and picked up his old plasma pistol from the table. He walked slowly to the door, his boots crunching on the floor. No one ever came here. His nearest neighbor was 3 kilometers away. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in, biting his face. Snow blew into the room, but Ray's eyes locked onto something in the storm. A figure. Small. Barefoot. Covered in thin cloth that was torn and frozen. The shape leaned heavily against the doorway. It was a woman, but not a human one. Her skin was pale blue with a soft, purplish hue. She had pointed ears and strange markings on her cheeks. Her eyes, glowing faintly, looked up at him, filled with fear and exhaustion. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a weak gasp came out. Ray reacted on instinct. "Hold on," he said, dropping his weapon. He reached out, catching her as she collapsed forward. She was light, almost too light. Her body was ice cold. Without thinking further, he dragged her inside and shut the door behind them. He laid her on the thick rug near the heater and ran to get blankets. He wrapped her gently, then rushed to boil water. His hands moved fast, like he had done this before, even though he hadn't. "Stay with me," he whispered, checking her breathing. Her lips were blue. Her fingers were stiff. He poured warm water into a bottle and pressed it gently to her hands. Then he moved another one to her chest. Her body didn't respond at first, but he didn't stop. Hour by hour, he worked. He fed her small sips of warm soup, rubbed her fingers to bring life back. She trembled in her sleep, mumbling words in a language he couldn't understand. At one point, she opened her eyes slightly and looked at him. "You're safe," Ray said quietly. "No one will hurt you here." She didn't answer. Her eyes closed again, but a tear rolled down her cheek. Ray gently wiped it away. Outside, the snowstorm roared louder, but inside the cabin, something had changed. Ray had lived here alone, for years. Yet now he was sharing warmth, space, and care with a stranger from another world. He sat down next to her, still alert but calm. He looked at her face. Her features were different, yet peaceful. Not a threat. She had come to his door not with a weapon, but with a dying hope. He noticed a strange collar around her neck, metal with blinking lights. It looked more like a tracker than jewelry. He didn't touch it, not yet. But it told him something. She wasn't just lost. She had been left, abandoned. That idea angered him more than he expected. Ray turned off the main lights, letting only the firelight glow through the cabin. He kept an eye on her breathing, steady now. Her body had stopped shaking. He wondered who she was, where she came from, why someone would leave her out there in this death-cold world. As he sat beside her, he made a silent promise. She came to his door almost frozen to death. But she wouldn't die here, not while he was alive. The morning light slowly pushed away the long night. Rays of cold sunlight slipped through the frost-covered window, painting the cabin with soft white colors. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world quiet and still. Inside, warmth filled the small space. Ray woke early. He glanced at the alien woman lying on the thick rug. Her breathing was calm now, steady like a peaceful wave. Her skin, pale blue and soft, looked less frozen. The thin blanket covered her gently, but she still looked very weak. Ray moved carefully, not wanting to wake her. He decided to make breakfast while she rested. In the small kitchen corner, he poured powdered eggs into a pan and started cooking. The smell of warm food filled the cabin, making it feel like home. After breakfast, Ray sat beside her again. He didn't know her name or language, but he wanted to connect. He took off his gloves and held her cold hand gently. Her fingers were thin and trembling, but they didn't pull away. She slowly opened her eyes, brighter this time. She looked at Ray with confusion mixed with something like hope. She tried to say something, but the words were soft and strange to his ears. Ray smiled softly. "I'm Ray," he said, pointing to himself. Then he pointed to her and asked, "Your name?" She hesitated and looked down, then whispered a sound. "Sarah." "Sarah," Ray repeated, nodding. The two sat quietly, sharing the moment. Ray didn't know much about her world, and Sarah didn't know much about his. But here, in this cold cabin, a silent bond was growing. Days passed like this. Ray helped Sarah slowly regain her strength. He showed her how to eat and drink safely again. He gave her clean clothes from his small collection. Her old torn dress was folded neatly in a corner. One day, as she sat by the fire, Ray noticed the strange collar around her neck. It had blinking lights and a small screen with symbols he didn't understand. Carefully, Ray asked, "What is this?" Sarah's face changed. Her eyes grew sad. She touched the collar but didn't remove it. Then she made a soft clicking noise. Ray guessed it was a tracker or some kind of control device. He did not want to hurt her by taking it off. Instead, he promised silently to protect her from whoever had put it there. The more time passed, the more Sarah tried to speak English words. Ray helped her practice, saying simple sentences, pointing to objects. Food, water, safe, friend. She repeated each word with effort, smiling when she got it right. Ray was patient. He knew trust took time. Sarah was scared, but she began to show small signs of joy. Sometimes she laughed quietly when Ray made funny faces or told stories from Earth. One evening, Sarah woke from a deep sleep and sat up suddenly. Her eyes were wide, and she looked around quickly, as if afraid of something. She whispered broken words. Mission. Danger. Left. Cold. Ray understood she was remembering something. A past event. Something bad. He took her hand and said gently, "Safe now. Here." Sarah nodded but kept looking distant, lost in her memories. Ray wanted to help her forget the pain, but he knew the past would not leave so easily. Instead, he promised himself to be her safe place, her shelter from the cold, both outside and inside. One afternoon, Ray took out an old radio device from his supplies. He hoped to send a message, a signal, maybe to find help for Sarah. But the machine was old and weak. He adjusted it carefully, sending short bursts of sound into the silent sky. Sarah watched curiously. She touched the radio and made a soft humming sound. Suddenly her eyes widened as if she heard something far away. She pointed to the sky and said, "They." Ray looked up, but saw only clear blue sky. "Who?" Ray asked. Sarah shook her head. She seemed worried again. Ray put down the radio. He did not know who they were, but he knew it was a warning. From that moment, Ray felt a new danger approaching. Something connected to Sarah's past and the strange collar she wore. Still, he refused to be afraid. He had made a choice. To save her, to stand by her. and Sarah was no longer just a lost alien in the cold. She was his friend. The cold wind outside had finally quieted. The sky was clear, with stars shining bright like diamonds. Inside the small cabin, Ray sat across from Sarah. The soft firelight danced on their faces, casting gentle shadows. Sarah held a small notebook Ray had given her. She was trying to write words, but her hands shook. Ray smiled and encouraged her. "Take your time," he said gently. Suddenly, Sarah looked up. Her eyes were filled with a deep sadness mixed with courage. She pointed to her neck, touching the strange collar. Then she looked at Ray and spoke slowly. From far place." Ray nodded, waiting patiently. "My people, scouts," she continued, "sent to find new worlds." She struggled with the words, but Ray could feel the weight behind them. "They, bad," she said, lowering her head, "did not want me. Speak truth." Ray's heart tightened. He leaned forward. "What truth?" Sarah's eyes met his, shining with pain. "My people want to take Earth," she said. "They believe humans, weak, easy to control. But I see different." Ray felt surprise. "You helped humans?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I tried, but they betrayed me, left me to die on cold planet." Tears welled in her eyes. She looked away, trembling. Ray stood and walked to the small window. He looked out at the quiet, snow-covered land. He thought about Sarah's story. A scout sent to find new worlds, but punished for kindness. "No one deserves that," Ray said, softly. He turned back to her. "You're safe here. I will protect you." Sarah smiled weakly. It was the first real smile Ray had seen from her. A small light of hope. Over the next days, Ray helped Sarah prepare for life on the frozen world. He gave her an old survival suit he had saved from his first days on Arctura 6. The suit was bulky but warm, perfect for harsh weather. Sarah struggled to walk in it at first, but Ray was patient. He showed her how to use the heater controls and how to move quietly through the snow. They practiced basic survival skills, building small fires, finding shelter, and using simple tools. Sarah's strength grew with each passing day. One morning, while exploring near the cabin, Sarah stopped suddenly. She pointed to a small device half buried in the snow. Ray picked it up and cleaned it carefully. It was a small communicator with alien symbols. Sarah gasped softly. She pressed a button and a weak light blinked. Ray looked at her. "Is this from your people?" She nodded. "Yes, but they will come." Ray's face grew serious. "Who?" Sarah looked into his eyes. "They who left me here to die. They will try to finish." Ray clenched his fists. "Not on my watch." That night, Ray could not sleep. He thought about what to do if the others came. He had only simple weapons: an old plasma pistol, a hunting knife, and his courage. Sarah sat by the fire, her hands warm near the flames. She looked at Ray and said softly, "Thank you for saving me." Ray smiled. "We saved each other." She looked at him, her eyes bright. "You are different. Humans are strong in way my people do not understand." Ray nodded slowly. "We fight with heart, with hope. Not just weapons." Sarah reached out and touched his hand. The warmth from Ray's skin spread through her fingers and a quiet trust grew between them. Suddenly, the cabin door shook. Both looked up, startled. Ray grabbed his plasma pistol and moved toward the door. Sarah stood beside him, ready but scared. Loud voice shouted from outside, speaking in the alien language Sarah had used before. Ray did not understand the words, but the tone was sharp and demanding. Ray opened the door slowly. Standing there were two figures, tall, dressed in black suits, carrying advanced weapons that gleamed under the stars. One of them stepped forward and spoke in broken English. "Return, Sarah. You belong to us." Sarah shook her head fiercely. "No, I am free. Ray stepped forward. She's with me now. You can't take her. The two aliens looked at Ray with surprise. They were not used to humans standing against them. We will return, one said coldly. You cannot hide her forever. They turned and disappeared into the dark forest. Ray closed the door and locked it tightly. He looked at Sarah. They will come back. Sarah nodded, fear and hope mixing in her eyes. Ray put his arm around her shoulder. Then we prepare together. The night air was sharp and clear. Stars sparkled above the frozen forest like silent watchers. Ray and Sarah worked quietly in the cabin, preparing for the coming danger. The warning from the alien scouts echoed in their minds. Soon, they would return. Ray had gathered what little weapons he had, his plasma pistol, a sturdy hunting knife, and some homemade traps. He also showed Sarah how to use a small flare gun for signaling. Their plan was simple: protect the cabin and keep Sarah safe. Sarah looked nervous but brave. The cold no longer seemed to bother her as much. The survival suit fit better now and she moved with more confidence. But she kept touching the collar on her neck, a reminder of the past she wished to leave behind. Are you ready? Ray asked softly. Sarah nodded. I will fight with you. Ray felt a surge of pride. This alien woman left to die in the cold had found strength inside. Together, they were a team. Suddenly, a faint noise came from the forest, the soft crunch of boots in the snow. Ray's heart quickened. Get inside, he whispered. They moved to the window and peered out. A sleek alien scout ship was landing nearby, its black surface reflecting the moonlight. Figures stepped out, moving carefully through the trees. Ray quickly closed the blinds and crouched near the door. Sarah stood beside him, tense but calm. The aliens moved closer, their weapons ready. They split into two groups, circling the cabin, to surround it. Ray's mind raced. He knew they were better armed and trained. But he had one advantage: the land. He had spent years learning the forests and the snowdrifts. He used that knowledge to set traps and alarms. Small wires stretched across paths would trip and make noise. Hidden pits covered with snow could slow the enemy down. As the aliens advanced, the traps worked perfectly. A sudden crash here, a surprised shout there. Ray smiled grimly. Sarah watched with wide eyes. You are clever. Ray nodded. Humans survive by being smart, not just strong. The attackers grew cautious. They moved slower, unsure where the traps might be. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the east side. One alien stepped on a wire and fell into a pit. His suit was scratched, and he shouted in pain. Ray used the moment to fire his flare gun into the sky. The bright light cut through the dark forest, a signal and a warning. The alien leader barked orders. They spread out, searching for the source. Inside, Sarah picked up the plasma pistol carefully. She aimed at the door, ready to defend Ray and herself. Ray whispered, Stay calm. We don't want to hurt anyone if we can help it. Minutes passed like hours. The cold crept back into the cabin, but the fire burned bright. Suddenly, the door shook violently. The aliens were trying to break in. Ray fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed through the forest. The door cracked but held firm. Let her go, the leader shouted in broken English. Sarah stepped forward, voice strong and clear. I am not yours. I choose to stay. The leader laughed coldly. You belong to us. You have no choice. Ray stood beside Sarah, unarmed now but fearless. She belongs to no one but herself. The two faced each other in silence. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, without warning, the alien stepped back. The leader looked at Ray with new respect. We will return, he said. But today, you win. The scouts left quietly, disappearing into the dark trees. Ray closed the door and locked it tightly. He looked at Sarah and smiled. We did it. Sarah smiled back. Because you believed in me. Ray felt a warmth deeper than the fire. He knew this was only the beginning. Together they sat by the fire, ready for whatever came next. The morning sun rose slowly, melting the frost on the cabin's roof. Outside, the forest was quiet, peaceful after the night's tension. Ray and Sarah sat by the fire, feeling the warmth spread through their bodies and hearts. Sarah looked different now. The fear in her eyes had faded. Her soft blue skin seemed brighter and her shoulders held a new strength. The strange collar around her neck was gone. She had removed it herself during the night, letting it fall into the snow like a heavy chain. Left behind? Ray smiled when he saw her face. Free, he said simply. Sarah nodded. Thanks to you, their home, once a lonely cabin, was now a place of hope. Together they worked to fix the small damage caused by the recent attack. Ray rebuilt the broken window frame, while Sarah gathered fresh wood from the forest. Their hands moved in rhythm, quiet but full of purpose. Later, as they sat outside, Ray looked up at the clear blue sky. Do you want to tell me more about your people? He asked gently. Sarah thought for a moment. My people, proud and strong, but cold inside. They see others as tools, not friends. Ray frowned. That's a lonely way to live. Sarah smiled sadly. I always hoped for more, but I was punished for wanting kindness. Ray reached out, taking her hand. You showed me kindness. You taught me courage. Sarah squeezed his hand. We both saved each other. Their friendship had grown into something deeper, more than just survival. In the quiet cold, they found warmth in each other's presence. Days turned into weeks. Sarah learned Earth's languages faster than Ray expected. They talked about stars, history, and the simple joys of life. One afternoon, Sarah helped Ray repair his old snow vehicle. She laughed as they worked, her voice light and joyful. You're not like the stories, she said. Humans, not weak. Ray grinned. We're stubborn and full of surprises. News of the strange human and alien friendship quietly spread through the nearby settlements. Some aliens who had left their cruel leaders heard about Sarah's choice. They found hope in her story. One evening, while watching the sunset paint the sky with orange and pink, Sarah looked at Ray. Thank you, she said softly, for opening your door, for giving me everything. Ray smiled back. You gave me more than you know. You gave me a friend, a reason to keep going. As night fell, the stars shone brighter than ever. Two figures sat side by side, watching the universe with quiet wonder. On this cold, distant world, a human and an alien had found more than survival. They had found a new beginning, together.